thrilled to have the opportunity to share with you all and kind of take you into one side of my brain. You can probably see that I like to have fun, hence the Adele in the beginning, and also because her tickets are too expensive for me, so I won't be seeing her live. But I thought about like, what can I talk to this amazing group about? And I thought perhaps I can share some of the lessons I've learned over the past couple of years becoming a supplier. After spending several years on the client side of the business, I am now in a seat that many of you all sit in and have learned quite a bit. So I thought I would kind of think out loud with y'all. So before we get into that, I wanted to share a little bit about my career journey. I believe that careers are indeed a journey. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I thought that I would start an agency and freelance for other agencies, I didn't see that as a possibility for my future. But just like on The Wiz or The Wizard of Oz, I like The Wiz because, I like Michael Jackson. But either way, it is such a journey that we cannot predict. We can plan, but we cannot predict the future. And that truly has represented what my career has looked like. So before starting 828 Insights, I worked for about 15 years on the client side of the business. I started my career at Bath and Body Works. If you guys have seen those little 1-ounce sanitizers, that was one of the first products that I got to help market to the world. So incredible experience, and just knew I wanted to do it more globally. So I ended up going to get an MBA from The Ohio State University, from which I was recruited to Procter & Gamble. So spent a couple of years there in consumer market knowledge, doing global hair care innovation work, as well as some innovation work that was more closer in on the delivery side of the business. I then jumped back to the brand management side of the world and worked for Abbott Nutrition, where I managed the Similac brand, and then spent some time on the innovation team at McCormick and Company, the spice company. So have quite a bit of experience on the client side of the business. And I think that is what has helped me in this new world that I now live in as a supplier, having a perspective of what people do with what we produce for them, and helping them help themselves through what we produce for them as suppliers is, I think, a unique perspective that I'm sure other people on the line bring as well, but one that has certainly helped me over the past couple of years. So in 2019, I jumped on over to the other side, certainly still within the world of this research brand building place, but now get to work with lots of different brands and companies on a regular basis, which is incredibly exciting to me. I'm never bored is what I tell people, and it's such a privilege to be able to do the work that we do. So as I thought again about what I would share with you all, I thought I'd perhaps dissect out loud what are some of the lessons that I've learned now that I've spent almost 4 years on this side of the business. 4 years feels like 40, quite frankly, because as you all know, as a supplier, one day is like a week in our world. So I thought I would just kind of think about, what do I wish I would have known when I was a client? But then the vice versa is, if I ever were to go back to the client side, how would I behave differently so that I could be a good client? Because I think it goes both ways, right? It's not just the people that are servicing the brands, but also the brands themselves should have a different thought process to making a great research experience for everybody. So the first lesson, I know this is not shocking to a lot of people, but a proposal cannot write itself, especially in our qualitative world. A proposal takes time, right? It's something that we put a lot of thought and effort into. It sometimes requires lots of different conversations to get to what you actually propose. It's dependent on things like people's budgets, people's willingness to travel, as we discovered through COVID, people's comfortability with different platforms and technology. And while that seems very rudimentary, I have to say, when I was a client myself, I sometimes didn't know what I was asking suppliers to come up with, right? So what might feel like a very small ask might actually cost a supplier a lot of money to put together. We spend sometimes a couple $1,000s to actually just propose for the opportunity to bid on a project. And so the vice versa of the fact that a proposal cannot write itself is, if I were to go back to the client side, I would definitely allow a bit more space and grace for that proposal turnaround time. So if you want to do a multi-phase study, I can't have that done for you by tomorrow, right? Which seems silly, but it is very true. So banishing this idea of, and I need this tomorrow, would be one thing that I would adjust. I'd also be very direct and clear about how we're sourcing thoughts for the proposals. So does that mean that, if they're multi-bidding, for example, if there's lots of people bidding on the same amount of work, asking questions like, how are you going to make your decision, can go a really long way to helping the supplier think about, what they need to demonstrate in order to win the work. And then finally, provide feedback on every proposal. Sometimes proposals are sent and you might not hear back, which, I tried not to do as a client, but sometimes things get busy and you forget to respond. These points of feedback are incredibly important, even if you don't choose a supplier, because it helps them understand what they could have done differently, how they can improve, and how they can perhaps earn your trust in the future. The second lesson, the platinum rule goes a very long way. So we all know the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or something like that. Well, the platinum rule says, do unto others wherever possible as they would want to be done to them. So, in the client side world, a lot of things are very progressive in nature, meaning you're always looking for the next promotion, or you always want to be in front of the right kind of management partner, et cetera, right? However, you have to really think about, who needs what around me in order to make that next step in your career. Well, the same is true on the other side of the business. I constantly think about how can I get our best clients promoted. That is for me the best feeling ever when a client calls and says, based on this work we partner with, I just got a promotion, right? Like that is what we're working for now. And so if I were to go back to the client side, I would ask those questions of suppliers. How can I help you get promoted? What is the reward system like within your system of doing things at your agency? I'd also write a lot more recommendations because that goes a really long way, especially for small businesses and for freelancers. Writing a recommendation can give them the opportunity to continue their work. The next lesson and final lesson, talented teams are busy. Again, seems silly, but developing relationships with people far before you need them is really, really important in this industry so that when you need them, you can pull on the collateral of trust that you've built over time. And so having those relationships kind of in the hopper is incredibly important. The second thing is, and Colson just talked about this, connecting with other people in the industry on a regular basis through things like MRxPros can help you build your Rolodex of people that you can call on, and then prepare your team for how to best engage in proposals and throughout the project. So finally, shout out to Nancy Cox. She said on LinkedIn, hey, what are you unlearning? And I thought I would throw a slide in here to talk a little bit about what I'm unlearning. And some of you that have spent time on the client side know that sometimes things can be tested to death almost. And, companies will wait until things are perfect before they go to launch. Well, I'm certainly unlearning that everything needs to be perfect. Sometimes agility can win over perfection. And so that's something I'm constantly personally working on unlearning because I like to be as tied and ticked as possible. If you've worked with me, you know that I'm very serious about making sure things get as close to perfect as possible. But giving up this notion of perfect is really important on this side of the business and on the client side as well. I just thought that was cute, so I threw that in there. So now my question for you all for discussion today is twofold. If you're a supplier and on the supplier side of the business, what's one thing you wish your clients knew? And how might you help them learn that thing? If you're a client partner, what's one thing you wish your suppliers knew? And how might you help them learn that thing? That's my encouragement to you all today. And at the end of the day, we're all in this together. So I hope you have a great time in your small groups.